Oh, so we're just now starting to dial?
I'm starting to dial. In a couple seconds, you will see sign on air. It means you are live. It's happening now, and you can start to talk.
Good evening, and welcome to the Rounds for Senate live telephone town hall conference call with special guest, Senator John McCain from Arizona. My name is Summer, and I will be your host for tonight's telephone town hall meeting. Thank you for joining us. In a moment, Senator McCain will join us with some opening remarks, but I want to explain the format for tonight's call first. If you'd like to ask a question this evening, it's very easy. Just press 0 on your phone and someone will assist you. Also, if you're interested in volunteering for the Rounds for Senate campaign, please press 1 now. This is a live question and answer session with Senator McCain, and in a few minutes you'll have the opportunity to speak directly to him. Remember, if you would like to ask a question, please press 0 on your telephone keypad. You will be transferred to someone who will take your name and your question. You can also press 1 now if you would like to volunteer for the Rounds for Senate campaign. We'd like to get through as many questions as possible tonight. To help us accomplish that goal, we must limit all callers to only 1 question. If your question is chosen, your name will be called and you will be asked to repeat your question for the senator. And now I'll turn it over to Senator McCain for some opening remarks.
Well, thank you for joining me tonight. I'm U.S. Senator John McCain, and you know I'm from Arizona, and I appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedules to join me for a telephone town hall in support of my friend Mike Rounds for U.S. Senate. And before I go any further, I would also like to tell all your friends and neighbors that come and spend the winter with us here in Arizona, you're always welcome. We appreciate your presence, and we obviously appreciate your contributions to our economy. You know, if you're as frustrated as I am with the dysfunction and gridlock of Harry Reid's Do-Nothing Senate, I think you recognize that things need to change in Washington. We need to send leaders to Washington that exhibit the common sense values that get our country headed in the right direction. People like Mike Rounds, who has served as a governor, a balanced budget, lower taxes, all the things that we don't do in our nation's capital. That's what Mike Rounds has been doing as governor of your wonderful state. And the stakes are very high for South Dakota voters. The balance of power, as you well know, is going to be in this race. And I just came from a trip out to Iowa, and before that, I was in North Carolina, and before that, I was in New Hampshire. And I can tell you, these races are basically toss-ups, and so we need South Dakota very badly, and so and we need a person like Mike Rounds. He's got the proven record: balanced budget, taxes low, regulations kept in check, 28,000 new jobs during one of the worst recessions in our nation's history. He'll join us in repealing and replacing Obamacare. When we get the majority, regulations. We need to be an energy independent nation. As anybody knows that at South Dakotans, that's the Keystone XL pipeline. That's thousands of jobs. That's putting us further on the path to energy independence. That it's huge. And I want to talk about one other issue very quickly. And that, of course, is our veterans. You know, South Dakota has contributed so many wonderful veterans to our nation. I think of Joe Foss. I think of John Thune's father, who was a brave naval aviator in World War II. He doesn't talk about it, but he's one of the genuine American heroes. Well, South Dakota's full of them, and we have a terrible and unacceptable situation in our veterans' care. You probably know that this whole scandal began to unfold in Phoenix, PA, and when we found out that 50 Phoenix veterans had died for lack of care. Veterans who literally died of lack of care. Of course, that's an unacceptable, outrageous situation. It's a result of a lot of things, including 6 years of Obama's inattention to our veterans. But we need to fix the problem. And we passed legislation, thanks to John Thune playing a very big role as you know, he's in our leadership team. But it's only the beginning. It's only the beginning. The Inspector General of the Veterans Administration has stated that there are systemic, endemic, fundamental problems in the VA. And one thing I know about Mike Rounds is that he'll be working side by side with me and with John Thune and others, including a number of the veterans in our Senate, to fix this problem. But don't think it's going to be easy. It's not. And we need to fix this terrible scandal. I'm frankly embarrassed about it. And I would be glad to talk to you a little bit about this feckless foreign policy of this president. ISIS didn't have to happen. The JV sure as heck turned into the varsity, didn't it? And we could have left a residual force behind in Iraq. We didn't. Now the black flag of ISIS flies over cities where brave Marines and soldiers sacrificed their lives and many grievously wounded. I'll be glad to talk about that more, but the world is a more dangerous place than I have ever seen it. And frankly, I could use the Mike Rounds and his presence and his votes and his knowledge about the national security challenges that we face. So with that, thanks for joining me, and I hope the weather's fine. I've been asked to announce by the Phoenix Chamber of Commerce the temperature will finally be down in the 80s next week. So thanks for joining me on the call. And may I say that I've had before I open up for questions, I must tell you that I've traveled to South Dakota on numerous occasions, but probably one of my more interesting visits was to Sturgis, and when I was running for president, and I must say that's a very unique and interesting cultural experience. So with that, we'll turn it over to your questions or comments, and thanks for joining me, and hopefully we're going to send Mike Rounds to the United States Senate.
Thank you, Senator McCain. All right, folks, just a quick reminder. If you want to ask a question or make a comment, please press 0. And since the Senator mentioned the situation with the VA, we're going to start off with a question on the VA scandal. Rich in Aberdeen, you are live with Senator McCain.
Hi, Rich.
Hi, thanks, Son. Thanks for taking my call. I'm a disabled veteran of the Iraq War, and I rely on my VA health coverage more than ever now that Obamacare has made my other options unaffordable. Can you give us a little bit better in-depth update on that VA scandal? And can you also maybe mention to them in your investigation of this issue any changes in protocol? There's a recent article coming out about veterans being exposed to chemical weapons that weren't getting the care they were receiving, needed to be receiving either. Obviously, veterans need that care.
Well, apparently on that issue, thanks for calling. Thanks for serving, my friend. We're proud of you. On that issue, that apparently there was some of our soldiers were exposed to a place where the chemical weapons had been stored, and I'm not sure we've got a handle on it yet. We have asked for those people who were in that area to come forward so we can test them and treat them. But this sounds a little bit to me, my friend, like the old Agent Orange problem that we had, which took so long before Americans and our government became aware of it. On the issue of the legislation, we passed legislation that increased health care dramatically, provided for the new clinics to be built. The most important part to me was two provisions. One, if a veteran lives more than 40 miles from a VA facility, then that veteran can have a choice card and go to the healthcare provider of his or her choice. I think that's important, particularly in states like yours and mine, where we have people living in long distances away. Second is that if there's an inordinate length of time that you are on a waiting list, then you automatically will go to a private health care provider. Now, frankly, I would like to see every veteran to just have a choice to go where they want, either to the VA or to a private health care provider. We're still working on that. I'd like to tell you that this new head of the VA is doing a good job, but I can't say that right now. I was very impressed with his credentials. I was very impressed with the meeting that I had with him in my office. He's a West Point graduate, former head of the Procter & Gamble, and very successful. And he told me and Senator Flake, the other senator from Arizona, that he was going to go to work right away. Well, he has not fired anybody. The three people who were administering the VA hospital where this all started, who, by the way, lied to me and Senator Flake by telling us there was nothing wrong at the Phoenix VA, he still hasn't fired them. He still hasn't fired them, and they're being paid. Your tax dollars are paying their salary while they're on, quote, administrative leave. That's not acceptable, and you and I agree with it. Senator Flake and I just wrote him a pretty stern letter telling him he's got to start enforcing the law. And by the way, if we get the majority, Senator Isaacson will be the chairman of the Veterans Affairs Committee, and he'll do a great job. So thanks for the call, and thanks for serving.
Thank you, Senator McCain. Next up, we have Emily in Brookings, and Emily has a question about the Keystone Pipeline. Emily, go ahead. You're on live with Senator McCain.
Hello, thank you. Senator McCain, I read in the newspaper that Mr. Weiland said that the Keystone XL pipeline wouldn't create jobs in South Dakota, and that was one of the reasons that he opposed it. Can you please describe if you believe the project will create jobs and what impact it will have on the state economy?
Well, I don't know where Mr. Weiland has been residing, but the fact is President Obama's own State Department said the Keystone XL pipeline would bring 3,000 to 4,000 direct and indirect jobs to South Dakota while the project is being constructed. It support 40,000 jobs, $2 billion in wages. It generate approximately $19 million in annual property tax revenue in South Dakota. But look, even more important than that, and those are important, but the fact is that we need to be energy independent. And look at how the world would be today if it wasn't for the power and influence of Middle Eastern oil and Russian oil, and how Russia is basically blackmailing these countries in Eastern Europe because they're dependent on Russian energy. The sooner we are completely energy independent, and the Keystone Pipeline is a huge movement in that direction, the better off we're going to be as a nation. So that's, frankly, I cannot understand why anybody from South Dakota would be in opposition, but that's what it is. And I know that Mike Rounds is committed, and there's problems with the rail carriers, shippers, Surface Transportation Board, and Mike Rounds is committed to working out those kinks. Right. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Next up, we have Katie in Aberdeen, and she has a question about ISIS and our national security strategy. Katie, you are on live with Senator McCain.
Thank you for being here with us tonight, Senator, and taking time out of your busy schedule to speak to us. I'm concerned about our national security and the growth and radical development of terror organizations such as ISIS. What's the Republican strategy to deal with this? Because obviously we're getting no presidential leadership on the topic.
Well, one of the most shameful chapters recently in American history has been the last 6 years. When you have former President Jimmy Carter criticizing President Obama for a lack of leadership, we're in pretty dire straits. The fact is that this president came to the presidency believing that we could leave Iraq and Afghanistan no matter what, and that America was going to end wars, and yet our enemies and adversaries did not agree with that, and he went ahead and withdrew. Recently, as you know, former Secretary Panetta wrote a book, and it got a lot of publicity, basically where he's saying that we could have and should have left a force behind. Look, that the surge in Iraq in 2006 was done by the greatest general that I've ever known, was carried out by General Petraeus. We, at a great sacrifice, we had the situation stabilized, and then President Obama decided to withdraw everybody. And I might point out that Senator Joe Lieberman, Senator Graham, and I predicted exactly what has been happening. And when everybody says they were surprised, we weren't surprised. We weren't surprised because we spent so much time over there over the years. So we're now facing a crisis of enormous proportions. The Iraqi military has been defeated. We now are facing the largest, most powerful, richest terrorist enclave in history. They control an area the size of the state of Indiana. They are cruel beyond belief. They announced about a week ago that enslavement of women was in keeping with Sharia law. You know, the president talks about war on women, and he doesn't do anything about what's happening with ISIS. So there's a lot of things we got to do, and I'll try to make it short because I know there's other people on the line. But we need to arm the Peshmerga. We need to provide, establish a no-fly zone so that the Free Syrian Army can operate. It's immoral what we're doing to them now, saying we're going to train them and then letting Bashar Assad barrel bomb them. Remember that there's 200,000 people that have been killed. So, and we need to get more boots on the ground. That does not mean the 82nd Airborne Division, but it does mean forward air controllers. It means special forces. It means trainers for the Iraqi military to rebuild it. And all of these things the president is doing slowly, and grudgingly. When if we'd have done many of these things at the beginning, when all this happened, it wouldn't be what it is today. It's gruesome, it's terrible, and it's a blot on American history. And I don't know what we're going to do, frankly, for the next 2 years, except if we get the majority in the Senate, we'll be able to force the president to do things the right way, at least to some degree. So thanks for the call. I'm sorry that I don't have any better news for you, except to tell you that the men and women who are serving the military are still outstanding. But sequestration is harming their morale rather badly. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Folks, just want to remind you, if you want to ask a question, please press 0 on your keypad. And also, if you are interested in volunteering for the Rounds for Senate campaign, you may press 1 now, and someone will get your information. Next up, we have Ann in Aberdeen, and Ann has a question about the cuts made with Obamacare and how that will affect Medicare. Ann, you're on live with Senator McCain.
Thank you, Senator McCain, for taking our questions and taking this time to speak with us. I know that the Democrats cut $700 billion in Medicare to pay for the Obamacare. How will this really affect our Medicare? And I'm really concerned about that because my mother has this and some of my other relatives, and I will be on Medicare hopefully in the next 5 years.
Well, thank you. It's interesting you mention it because we spent something like 2 months trying to fight Obamacare. They had 60 votes in the United States Senate, and one of the first amendments that we tried was an amendment to restore that $700 billion cut in Medicare in order to pay for Obamacare. And it, of course, like many other votes, it went down on party lines. It's just, it's unconscionable because there's a program that many of you know and you may be under it called Medicare Advantage, where basically you give seniors a chance to choose pretty much their own health care that they feel they need, providers they need, and that, of course, has gone by the wayside. What do we need to do is very simple, and this is an idea, frankly, that my old friend Senator Phil Gramm has. Pass legislation that says anybody who wants to be in Obamacare, fine, you're in. If you don't want to be in it, don't pay on it. And that way, frankly, it'll cause Obamacare to collapse because we are taking money from the health care of younger Americans who are paying for it and don't need it and transferring it to health care for older Americans. So, and of course, we all know about the problems with the startup and all that, but we are now seeing in a number of states where people are basically having their insurance policies canceled for one reason or another, not being in compliance in the view of the bureaucrats with Obamacare. In fact, I believe it is trying to remember. I think it was North Carolina where 20,000 people found that their health insurance has been canceled. So we need to fix it. We need to save the good parts of it, and there are a few good parts of it, but we have to go back to the drawing board. Mike Rounds is very familiar with this. As governor of South Dakota, he has wrestled with this issue almost every single day. We know that there are many, many wonderful senior citizens in the state of South Dakota who need this health care. And Mike Rounds has been really a leader on this, and one that the other governors have looked up to as well. So maybe we ought to start looking at what South Dakota has done and implementing that with Mike Rounds' help in the Senate on the national stage. So thanks.
Thank you, Senator. Again, if you would like to ask a question, please press 0. Next up, we have Roger from Falkton, and Roger has a question on EPA regulations. Roger, you're live with Senator McCain.
Hi, Senator. I know a lot of farm and ranch families have concern over how much power the environmental groups have established. So my question is, what could the next senator from South Dakota do in regard to EPA's navigable waters rule and their desire to regulate cow methane?
Well, I think that there's really one way to look at this, and that is to have control of the Senate. And so here we have the EPA and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers going to redefine the waters of the United States. They're even talking about in Arizona, if you can believe that. My predecessor, Barry Goldwater, used to say we have so little water in Arizona that the trees chase the dogs. They're going to add new definition that could add countless bodies of water to the list of federally controlled waters, including small wetlands, creeks, and even permanent potholes. That's how they're roping Arizona into it as well. These small bodies of water, they're not waters of the United States, and its expansion of the EPA's regulatory authority, it would be outrageous. So what do we need to do? We need to pass legislation in appropriations bills that say no funds shall be used to redefine the waters of the United States beyond its previous definition as articulated in previous times by the EPA and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. We have got to stop this overreach and protect the South Dakota property owners from burdensome regulations and fines. And I want to assure you again, if there's somebody who's been fighting the federal government tooth and nail in their regulations over and over again for the last 2 terms as governor of the state of South Dakota, it's Mike Rounds. He knows how to fight him. He'll get in the Senate. He'll have the tools to even fight him even more.
Thank you, Senator. Folks, remember, if you want to ask a question, please press 0 on your keypad. And also, if you're interested in volunteering for the Rounds for Senate campaign, you can press 1 now. Next up, we have Judy in Chamberlain. And Judy has a question about our Second Amendment rights. Judy, you're on live with Senator McCain.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator. I know at the last Congress, Harry Reid tried to pass gun control. And now we have some big money interests like Mike Bloomberg throwing money around toward gun control. And I don't have a lot of money. I guess I'm wondering what we can do to be sure that our Second Amendment rights are protected.
Well, first of all, elect Mike Rounds. His record is very clear. It's not an accident that he's being endorsed in this campaign by the NRA, an organization that a lot of us trust. Let me just mention to you that we had a terrible tragedy here in Arizona. You might remember our wonderful member of Congress, Gabby Giffords, was shot, and others were killed and wounded. And, you know, it was really brought home to us that some of the problems that are associated with people who are mentally ill acquiring weapons. Now, the fact is that there are people that should not have weapons, and we've got to do a better job of identifying people who are mentally ill, who can get a hold of these weapons, and that has to do with a number of things that we do now. Currently, there are 9 classes of persons that are prohibited from receiving or possessing firearms, including persons convicted of a crime punishable by imprisonment exceeding 1 year, fugitives, persons who are adjudicated as mentally defective. We have to do a better job on identifying the mentally defective. You know, when these terrible tragedies occur and kid goes to school and all of that kind of stuff that we see, many times and in retrospect, we see that there was some mental illness there. So we've got to do a better job on that. I don't think we need additional gun control legislation. In fact, I believe that when you look at additional laws, don't prevent high-risk individuals. And I'd also point out that when they are talking about banning all kinds of sophisticated weapons and other than that, most of the murders that occur in this country are done with handguns. There is murders that take place in many inner cities across America every weekend. And so it's not an easy issue. But I think it's important to recognize that the Second Amendment says the right of the people to keep and bear arms. And to keep and bear arms is what we're allowed to do. And I think there are many occasions when you can see that people who have weapons in their homes, which they have bought legally, that has been a deterrent to crime rather than something that would facilitate it, a situation that would facilitate it. So Mike Rounds has a clear record. I think you could trust the judgment of the NRA on this issue, and there's no doubt how the NRA stands on this. And by the way, no doubt how the people of South Dakota stand on it too. So thanks for the call.
Thank you, Senator. Again, if you guys would like to volunteer for the Rounds for Senate campaign, you can press 1 now. And if you have a question, please feel free to press 0. Next up, we have a question from Ted in Sioux Falls, and he is asking about the death tax. Ted, you're on live with Senator McCain.
Hi, this is Doug from Oklahoma, but I do have a question on the death tax. Senator, thanks for taking my question. I'm a small business owner. I have many customers who are farmers and ranchers, and, over the last decade, we have not had much of a chance to do any estate planning because nothing has been made even reasonably close to permanent on that issue. And I guess my question is, what are the Republicans' plans for the death tax when they take over the Senate?
Well, I think the first thing is that to recognize that a lot of us are opposed to the notion that death is a taxable event, that people who work hard all their lives, and particularly South Dakotans, particularly those in agriculture, have to face the ups and downs of the weather and the prices and of the commodities that they grow and all that. If they want to pass on what their hard-earned labor has acquired them to their children and their grandchildren, they ought to be able to. Since 2010, as you know, the long-term status of the estate tax has been in flux, and we adjusted the estate tax in 2013, and that legislation permanently set the exemption level at $5 million per spouse and has indexed this amount moving forward. and the states exceeding the exemption level will be taxed at a rate of 40%. Now, that, I think, it was a very good step forward. I think it was something that we should be pleased with. But it still leaves so many farmers and others in South Dakota that are subject to very high taxes, and they're not able then to do what we were just talking about. And especially it's been exacerbated in South Dakota, as you know, because the farmland prices increased by more than 50% in the last 5 years. So, but South Dakota is not alone. This is true throughout the heartland of America. So it's estimated that 15 to 20% of South Dakota farmers and ranchers are remaining exposed to the death tax, even with the higher exemption amount passed in 2013. Look, I have never believed in the estate tax, whether it be for farmers or whether it be for businessmen, men or others. And so, Mike Rounds is very clear on this. He has worked with members of the congressional delegation and John Thune on that legislation that we passed in 2013, which was an improvement. But we still have a long way to go. And I thank you for the call.
Thank you, Senator. Next up, we have Tony, who is in Sioux Falls, and he has a question about the current Majority Leader, Harry Reid. Tony, you're on live with Senator McCain.
Good evening, Senator, and thanks for taking the time to speak with us up in South Dakota. When I get together with my friends, they talk a lot about some of the gridlock in Washington. And so my question is all the hype about Harry Reid's mismanagement of the Senate, is that true?
Well, it's not only mismanagement; it's a failure to observe the United States Senate and the institution that it is, which is supposed to be an institution for debate, for amendments, for votes, and that was reiterated time after time in the years that I've been in the Senate by Democrat and Republican leaders both, and they have fought for the ability of any senator to come to the floor and be able to propose an amendment. Harry Reid has, let me just point out, as a result of his work, that's the least productive of any Senate in the Congress in the history of the United States of America. That's pretty remarkable achievement when you think about it. And so what he does, and it's always a little boring talking about parliamentary procedures, but the fact is that he will not let bills come to the floor, but when he does, then he does a thing called fill up the tree, which means you can't propose an amendment. So then we hang around, and then that bill dies, and then he tries another one. And he doesn't want to force votes, or he doesn't want his Democrat members be forced to vote on issues that may not please their constituents. Well, that's why they send us there. A perfect example of that is the XL pipeline that we talked about earlier. Harry Reid would not allow a vote on the XL pipeline. Why? Because some moderate Democrats would have voted for it, and it would have passed. And so it's been very frustrating to me and to all of us and to our constituents. You know, when my constituents ask, well, why didn't you at least get a vote on fill in the blank? I have to tell them that the Senate is a different place, and that is a place where it's impossible to get open and honest debate and amendments. I was just in Iowa with a really great candidate we have there named Joni Ernst. She was a Guard member of the Guard, and she was a state senator and all that. And we went to 8 different places yesterday in Iowa campaigning, and I started calling it the Retired Harry Reid Tour. And that's what it's really all about. And that's why Mike Rounds will be one of those votes that we can count on to bring. Look, Mike Rounds, he's not afraid of taking a tough vote. I mean, after all, that's what governors have to do all the time. But we will replace him, and Mitch McConnell who would be the majority leader in the Senate when we get the majority, has committed to having the Senate run the way that it's supposed to and the way that it did for a couple of hundred years before Harry Reid appeared in the majority leader's position.
All right, folks, we have time for just a few more questions here. And remember, if you'd like to volunteer for the Rounds for Senate campaign, you may press 1 now, and someone will get your information. Next up, we have Marilyn, and she's in Sioux Falls, and she has some questions about the treatment of Israel. Marilyn, you're on live with Senator McCain.
Thank you, Senator. I'm just very concerned about the way that our government is treating Israel. The Bible is very clear about it, that if we don't befriend Israel, we will certainly experience judgment, big time, for our country. And I'm just wondering what can be done so that our president will be respectful to Israel and help them.
You know, as you know, I've been around for quite a while, and I've got to say that I've seen a lot of unusual things and heard a lot of unusual things, but it was reported by a very reliable reporter this week that a high administration official said that Bibi Netanyahu, the prime minister of Israel, and Israel is our closest ally, as you just pointed out, was chicken blank. I frankly have never heard anything like that in my life. And, you know, here we have ISIS, we have unrest, we have Muslim Brotherhood, we have Muslim extremism, we have Iran and nuclear weapons, and our best friend, obviously, is Israel and has been our closest friend. And what does the president, high-ranking official, say? I mean, it's just beyond belief. And, you know, there have been leaks to the media, and the administration has vigorously pursued those leaks, and they have gone after reporters that they were able to nail down as having done those leaks. And the president's spokesman, the State Department, was asked if they were going to investigate to see who gave that statement, and they said they were not going to investigate it. Well, all I can tell you is that it's really shocking and disgraceful, and I believe that whoever said it should come forward, and that person should, on nationwide television, apologize to the government and people of Israel. Yeah, unlike most of the other rulers in the Middle East, Bibi was elected in a free and fair election. You know, that's and for us not to respect that leader, of course, is, you know, it's not only ridiculous, it's outrageous. But this is a rudderless, feckless administration that has caused us more damage around the world than I can have time to describe to you. Our enemies don't respect us, and our friends don't rely on us, and that's a real bad way to be in this kind of world we're living in. So thank you for the call.
Thank you, Senator. Our time here is almost up, and we have time for one more question. Before we get to that last question, I want to give our audience a chance to get more involved in the Rounds for Senate campaign. So if you are interested in volunteering for the campaign, please press now. For our last caller, we have Jerry in Sioux Falls, and he has a question about the deficit. Jerry, you're on live with Senator McCain.
Hello, Jerry.
Oh, looks like we lost Jerry here. We'll go to Beth in Sioux Falls. She has a question about the president's executive overreach. Beth, you are on live with Senator McCain.
Hi, I have a question about the regulations and executive overreach. Is there something that we can be done to try to rein back in Obama?
Well, we send Mike Rounds to the United States Senate, and we have a majority. We can do two things. One, we have a budget, and the budget rules are different from the other rules of bills that come to the floor, and that only requires 51 votes to get provisions into the budget. The second thing is that we can pass bills that say no funds shall be expended for implementation of a regulation which deems any pool of water as navigable waters. So we can do that, but it requires the majority in both houses. Now, I just want to mention one area to you that I'm deeply concerned about, and that is on the issue of illegal immigration. It's been widely reported in the media that President Obama will act with executive power and give, quote, amnesty to maybe millions of people who are in this country illegally. I believe that we need to secure our borders, and I believe that we can secure our borders, but then I think we need comprehensive immigration reform. If the president acts in this dictatorial fashion, then I'm very much afraid that we're going to have that we're not going to make any progress whatsoever. So it's interesting you asked the question, because today Senator Marco Rubio and Senator Graham and I wrote a letter to the president saying, please don't do it. Let's fix the border. Let's repair the border and fix it and make it secure. And then we can work on E-Verify, which is every employer who hires someone has to have verification that they are in this country legally, that we have to have a provision that if someone comes across our border as a guest worker, that when that guest worker tenure expires, they have to go back to the country they came from. So all I can tell you is that we need to do something about the issue of people who are here in our country illegally, but we also have to fix our border, because I greatly fear our friends at ISIS, who have committed to attacking the United States of America, may decide they want to come to the United States across our southern border. And by the way, there is a threat to the United States of America, and it is clear. The guy who was the head of ISIS spent 4 years in our prison camp in Iraq, called Camp Bucca, and when he left, he said to the Americans, he said, I'll see you in New York. Have no doubt what their goal is, and that's why I am so worried. By the way, again, this same outfit that the president called the JV. Interesting, huh? So I thank you for the call, and I thank all of you. I want to tell you, I am very eagerly looking forward to having Mike Rounds in the United States Senate. He's been a great governor. He's a great South Dakotan and a great tradition of some wonderful, wonderful men and women who have been sent to the Senate from South Dakota. I don't know if there's been women. I'm not sure, to tell you the truth, as well as I know South Dakota, but I know some great individuals have been sent from South Dakota to the United States Senate in leadership positions, such as John Thune right now today, who's one of our Republican leaders in the Senate, a very handsome man. I've often said that if I looked like John Thune, I'd be President of the United States today. So I want to thank all of you. Remember the words of the late Mayor Daley of Chicago, who said, vote early and vote often. But seriously, I hope everyone will exercise their responsibility, and that is to get out and vote. And if you don't vote and you have a complaint, don't say anything, because this is your chance to choose your leaders. And I really look forward to coming back up and visiting with some most wonderful people in the heartland of America, and that's the folks of South Dakota. So thanks very much, all of you, and be sure we've only got a few more days here coming up on Tuesday, so let's get going, and I'll look forward to seeing all of you in Washington as we swear in Mike Rounds as the next senator from the state of South Dakota. Thanks very much.
We are at the end of our teletown hall. Senator McCain, thank you so much for your time this evening, and a special thank you to all of our participants in tonight's teletown hall.
Thank you.
Your interest in this election is appreciated, and remember to vote for Mike Rounds for the Senate on Tuesday. This call was paid for by the Rounds for Senate campaign. number 605-494-2026. Good night.